Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie The Day After Tomorrow in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called The Day After Tomorrow. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting facts about this movie in today's video, I'm going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, starcast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. The Day After Tomorrow is a 2004 America science fiction disaster film conceived, co-written, co-produced, and directed by Roland Emmerich, based on the 1999 book The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell and Whitley Strieber, and starring Dennis Quaid, Jake Gyllenhaal, Sela Ward, Emmy Rossum, and Ian Holm. The film depicts catastrophic climatic effects following the disruption of the North Atlantic Ocean circulation, in which a series of extreme weather events usher in climate change and lead to a new ice age. Originally slated for release in the summer of 2003, it debuted in Mexico City on May 17, 2004, and was released in the U.S. on May 28, 2004. The film was a commercial success, grossing $552 million worldwide against a production budget of $125 million, becoming the sixth highest-grossing film of 2004. Filmed in Montreal, it was the highest-grossing Hollywood film made in Canada at its time of release. The film received mixed reviews. It was nominated for Best Science Fiction Film and Best Special Effects at the Saturn Awards. Plot: Jack Hall is an American paleoclimatologist, and as he and his colleagues Frank and Jason drill for ice core samples in the Larsen Ice Shelf for the NOAA, the ice shelf splits away. At a UN conference in New Delhi, Jack discusses his research showing that climate change could cause an ice age, but U.S. Vice President Raymond Becker dismisses his concerns. Professor Terry Rapson, an oceanographer of the Headland Center in Scotland, befriends Jack over his views of an inevitable climate shift. Tokyo is struck by a giant hailstorm, and astronauts from the International Space Station spot three gigantic superstorms above Canada, Europe, and Siberia. Rapson's team in Scotland begin noticing severe temperature drops from multiple buoys from the North Atlantic, realizing Jack's theories were correct, but the climate shift is happening too fast. Remnants of a hurricane spawn a destructive tornado outbreak over the LA basin. Also, 3 helicopters sent to rescue the British royal family from Balmoral Castle crash in Scotland after they fly into their superstorm Cyclone I. Jack's and Rapson's teams, along with NASA meteorologist Janet Takata, build a forecast model based on Jack's research, discovering the impact of climate change will happen in 6 to 8 weeks, later discovered as being 7-10 days. Rapson notifies Jack that siphoned air from the upper troposphere flash freezes anything caught in the eyes of the cyclones, with temperatures below -150 degrees Fahrenheit, -101 degrees Celsius, which explains the helicopter crash. In New York City, Jack's son Sam, along with his friends Brian and Laura, participate in an academic decathlon, where they make a new friend, JD. The North American superstorm creates strong winds and rain that flood Manhattan in knee-deep water. All transportation halts, stranding the city population. A massive storm surge inundates the city, forcing Sam's group to seek shelter at the New York Public Library. But first, Laura, in an attempt to help rescue 2 French-speaking tourists in distress from a cab with a police officer, badly cuts her leg. Sam is able to contact Jack and his mother Lucy, a pediatrician, through a working payphone. Jack warns Sam of the exacerbating superstorm and urges him to stay inside and warm, and promises to rescue him. Rapson and his team succumb to the European storm. Lucy remains in her hospital caring for bedridden patients, where the authorities eventually rescue them. Upon Jack's suggestion, President Blake orders the southern states to be evacuated into Mexico, while the northern ones are warned by the government to seek shelter and stay warm. Jack, Jason, and Frank make their way to NYC. In Pennsylvania, Frank falls through the skylight of a mall covered in snow and sacrifices himself by cutting his rope to prevent his friends from also falling in. In the library, most survivors seek to join the southern states' refugees once the floodwater freezes, despite Sam's warnings. In Mexico, Becker learns that Blake's motorcade perished in the superstorm. Laura develops sepsis from her injury, whereupon Sam, Brian, and JD scour an abandoned Russian cargo ship that drifted into the city before the water froze for penicillin and supplies. When they find them, they also encounter a pack of escaped wolves from the Central Park Zoo. The boys fend off the wolves and make it back to the library with what they need as the eye of the North American superstorm passes over and freezes Manhattan. Jack and Jason take shelter in an abandoned restaurant. Days later, the superstorms dissipate. After finding people outside frozen to death, including those from the library who tried to escape, Jack and Jason reach the library, finding Sam's group alive. Jack sends a radio message to U.S. forces in Mexico. In his first address as the new president from the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, Becker apologizes on the Weather Channel for his ignorance and sends helicopters to rescue survivors including Jack and Sam's group in the northern states. On the International Space Station, astronauts look down in awe at Earth's transformed surface, now with ice sheets extending across much of the northern hemisphere, remarking that the air never looked so clear. Cast Dennis Quaid as Jack Hall, a NOAA paleoclimatologist. Jake Gyllenhaal as Sam Hall, Jack's teenage son. Sela Ward as Dr. Lucy Hall, a pediatrician who is Jack's wife and Sam's mother. Emmy Rossum as Laura Chapman, a high school student and Sam's friend and love interest. Ian Holm as Terry Rapson, a Scottish oceanographer of Scotland's Headland Centre. R.J. Smith as Brian Parks, a high school student and Sam and Laura's friend. Austin Nichols as J.D., a preparatory school student of very wealthy parents who befriends Sam, Laura, and Brian. Dash Mihawk as Jason Evans, Jack's colleague. J.O. Sanders as Frank Harris, Jack's colleague. Kenneth Welsh as Raymond Becker, the Vice President of the United States who later succeeds Blake. Perry King as Richard Blake, the President of the United States. Nestor Serrano as Tom Gomez, a NOAA administrator. Tamlin Tomita as Janet Takata, a NASA meteorologist. Glenn Plummer as Luther, a homeless New Yorker with a dog named Buddha, who gets trapped in the library. Adrian Lester as Simon, Rapson's colleague. Richard McMillan as Dennis, Rapson's colleague. Sasha Roys as Parker, an ISS astronaut. Christopher Britton as Vorstein. Amy Sloan as Elsa, a young woman trapped with Sam and the others in the New York Public Library. Sheila McCarthy as Judith, a librarian at the New York Public Library. Tom Rooney as Jeremy, a man trapped with Sam and the others in the New York Public Library who saves a 15th-century Gutenberg Bible from being burned. Christian Tessier as Aaron Mimi Kuzik as the Secretary of State. Chuck Shimada as Army General Pierce. Rick Hoffman as Gary Jason Blicker as Paul Robin Wilcock as Tony Ayana. Oshun as Jama, a Senegalese woman traveling to New York with her daughter Benata. Marilu Belugu as Benata, Jama's daughter. Production development. The Day After Tomorrow was inspired by Coast to Coast AM talk radio host Art Bell and Whitley Strieber's book, The Coming Global Superstorm, and Strieber wrote the film's novelization. To choose a studio, writer Michael Weimer created an auction, with a copy of the script being sent to all major studios along with a term sheet. They had a 24-hour window to decide whether to produce the movie with Roland Emmerich directing, and Fox Studios was the only studio to accept the terms. Filming The Day After Tomorrow was filmed predominantly in Montreal and Toronto, with some footage also shot in New York City and Chiyoda, Tokyo. Filming ran from November 7, 2002 until October 18, 2003. Visual and special effects. The Day After Tomorrow features 416 visual and special effects shots, with 9 visual and special effects houses, notably Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and Digital Domain, and over 1,000 artists, working on the film for over a year. Although a miniature set was initially considered according to the behind-the-scenes documentary, for the destruction of New York, effects artists instead utilized a 13-block-sized, LiDAR-scanned 3D model of Manhattan, with over 50,000 scanned photographs used for building textures. Due to its overall complexity and a tight schedule, the storm surge scene required as many as 3 visual and special effects vendors for certain shots. With the digital water created by either Digital Domain or Small Effects House Tweak Films, depending on the shot. Miniatures were employed for a later underwater scene in which a city bus is crushed under the bulbed stern of an abandoned Russian tanker ship that had drifted inland. Music soundtrack The Day After Tomorrow, original motion picture soundtrack, is the soundtrack of the film. It was released on May 18, 2004. Release. The film had its world premiere in Mexico City in May 17, 2004. It was released to theaters in the United States on May 28, 2004. Home media. The film was released on VHS and DVD by 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment on October 12, 2004, and was released in high-definition video on Blu-ray in North America on October 2, 2007, and in the United Kingdom on April 28, 2008, in 1080p with a lossless DTS HD master audio sound and few bonus features. DVD sales were $110 million, bringing the film's gross to $652,771,772. Reception box office. The film came in second at the U.S. box office behind Shrek 2 over its 4-day Memorial Day opening and grossed $85,807,341.19. For 20 years, it would hold the record for having the highest opening weekend for a natural disaster film until 2024, when it was dethroned by Twisters. It led the per-theater average with a 4-day average of $25,053, compared to Shrek 2's 4-day average of $22,633. At the end of its theatrical run, the film had grossed $186,740,799 domestically and $552,639,571 worldwide. It was the second highest opening weekend film not to lead at the box office. Inside Out surpassed it in June 2015. Critical response on Rotten Tomatoes: 45% of 219 critics gave the film a positive review, with an average rating of 5.3/10. The website's critics' consensus reads, "The Day After Tomorrow is a ludicrous popcorn thriller filled with clunky dialogue but spectacular visuals save it from being a total disaster." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 47 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade B on an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times described the film as profoundly silly, but nonetheless said the film was effective and praised the special effects. He gave it 3 stars out of 4. Mark Caro of the Chicago Tribune wrote a completely negative review, which considered the film unworthy of publicity for the climate change debate it had created. Political and scientific criticism. Emmerich did not deny that his casting of a weak president and the resemblance of Kenneth Welsh to Vice President Dick Cheney were intended to criticize the climate change policy of the George W. Bush administration. Responding to claims of insensitivity in his inclusion of scenes of a devastated New York City less than 3 years after the September 11 attacks, Emmerich said that it was necessary to showcase the increased unity of people in the face of disaster because of the attacks. Some scientists criticized the film's scientific aspects. Paleoclimatologist and professor of Earth and Planetary Science at Harvard University Daniel P. Schrag said, "On the one hand, I'm glad that there's a big-budget movie about something as critical as climate change. On the other, I'm concerned that people will see these over-the-top effects and think the whole thing is a joke. We are indeed experimenting with the Earth in a way that hasn't been done for millions of years, but you're not going to see another ice age, at least not like that." Marshall Shepard, a research meteorologist at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, expressed a similar sentiment. "I'm heartened that there's a movie addressing real climate issues. But as for the science of the movie, I'd give it a D- or an F. And I'd be concerned if the movie was made to advance a political agenda." According to University of Victoria climatologist Andrew Weaver, "It's the towering inferno of climate science movies, but I'm not losing any sleep over a new ice age because it's impossible." Patrick J. Michaels, a former research professor of environmental science at the University of Virginia and fellow at the Cato Institute, who rejected the scientific consensus on global warming, called the film propaganda in a USA Today editorial. As a scientist, I bristle when lies dressed up as science are used to influence political discourse. College instructor and retired NASA Office of Inspector General Senior Special Agent Joseph Gutines called The Day After Tomorrow a cheap thrill ride, which many weak-minded people will jump on and stay on for the rest of their lives, in a Space Daily editorial. Stefan Rahmstorff of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, an expert on thermohaline circulation and its effect on climate, said after a talk with scriptwriter Jeffrey Nachmanoff at the film's Berlin preview. Clearly, this is a disaster movie and not a scientific documentary, and the filmmakers have taken a lot of artistic license. But the film presents an opportunity to explain that some of the basic background is right. Humans are indeed increasingly changing the climate, and this is quite a dangerous experiment, including some risk of abrupt and unforeseen changes. Luckily, it is extremely unlikely that we will see major ocean circulation changes in the next couple of decades. I'd be just as surprised as Jack Hall if they did occur. At least most scientists think this will only become a more serious risk towards the end of the century. And the consequences would certainly not be as dramatic as the superstorm depicted in the movie. Nevertheless, a major change in ocean circulation is a risk with serious and partly unpredictable consequences, which we should avoid. And even without events like ocean circulation changes, climate change is serious enough to demand decisive action. Environmental activist and Guardian columnist George Monbiot called The Day After Tomorrow a great movie and lousy science. In 2008, Yahoo Movies listed The Day After Tomorrow as one of its top 10 scientifically inaccurate films. It was criticized for depicting meteorological phenomena as occurring over the course of hours, instead of decades or centuries. A 2015 Washington Post article reported on a paper published in Scientific Reports, which indicated that global temperatures could drop relatively rapidly, 1 degree Fahrenheit change or 0.5 degrees Celsius change, over an 11-year period, due to a temporary shutdown of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation caused by global warming. See also Film Portal 6 Degrees, Our Future on a Hotter Planet, a 2007 non-fiction book, The Coming Global Superstorm, a book on which the movie is based, 50 Degrees Below, a Kim Stanley Robinson novel in which greenhouse warming similarly disrupts the Gulf Stream, Time of the Great Freeze, a novel by Robert Silverberg about a second ice age, The World in Winter, a 1962 book by John Christopher about the beginning of a new ice age, Geostorm, a 2017 film with a similar premise from Emmerich's longtime collaborator Dean Devlin Ice, a 1998 film with a similar premise starring Grant Show, Udo Kier, and Eva LaRue. Snowpiercer 2013, a 2013 film about the remnants of humanity following a new global ice age. Snowpiercer TV, a TV series based on the aforementioned movie of the same name. Survival film. It is such a relief to hear the music swell up at the end of a Roland Emmerich movie. Its restorative power giving us new hope. Billions of people may have died, but at least the major characters have survived. Los Angeles was wiped out by flying saucers in Emmerich's Independence Day. New York was assaulted in his Godzilla, and now, in The Day After Tomorrow, Emmerich outdoes himself. Los Angeles is leveled by multiple tornadoes, New York is buried under ice and snow, the United Kingdom is flash frozen, and lots of the Northern Hemisphere is wiped out for good measure. Thank God that Jack, Sam, Laura, Jason, and Dr. Lucy Hall survive, along with Dr. Hall's little cancer patient. So, yes, the movie is profoundly silly. What surprised me is that it's also very scary. The special effects are on such an awesome scale that the movie works despite its cornball plotting. When tornadoes rip apart Los Angeles, not sparing the Hollywood sign, when a wall of water roars into New York, when a Russian tanker floats down a Manhattan street, when snow buries skyscrapers, when the crew of a space station can see nothing but violent storm systems. Well, you pay attention. No doubt some readers are already angry with me for revealing that Jack, Sam, Laura, Jason, Dr. Lucy Hall, and the little cancer patient survive. Have I given away the plot? This plot gives itself away. When cataclysmic events shred uncounted lives, but the movie zeroes in on only a few people, of course they survive. although some supporting characters may have to be sacrificed. What's amusing in movies like The Day After Tomorrow is the way the screenplay veers from the annihilation of subcontinents to whether Sam should tell Laura he loves her. The movie stars Dennis Quaid as the paleoclimatologist Jack Hall, whose computer models predict that global warming will lead to a new ice age. He issues a warning at a New Delhi conference, but is sarcastically dismissed by the American Vice President, Kenneth Welsh, who the movie doesn't even try to pretend doesn't look just like Dick Cheney. Our economy is every bit as fragile as the environment, the Vice President says, dismissing Jack's sensational claims. Before long, however, it is snowing in India, and hailstones the size of softballs are ripping into Tokyo. Birds, which are always wise in matters of global disaster, fly south double time. Turbulence tears airplanes from the sky. The president, Perry King, learns the FAA wants to ground all flights and asks the vice president, "What do you think we should do?" Meanwhile, young Sam Hall, Jake Gyllenhaal, goes to New York with an academic decathlon team, which includes Laura, Emmy Rossum of Mystic River, and Brian, R.J. Smith. They're stranded there. Ominous portents abound, and Jack finally gets his message through to the administration. This time, says a friend within the White House, it will be different. You've got to brief the president directly. Jack draws a slash across a map of the United States and writes off everybody north of it. He issues a warning that supercooled air will kill anybody exposed to it, advises those in its path to stay inside, and then he sets off to walk from Washington to New York to get to his son. Two of his buddies, also veterans of Arctic treks, come along. We are wondering, A, why walk to New York when his expertise is desperately needed to save millions? B, won't his son be either dead or alive, whether or not he makes the trek? And C, how quickly can you walk from Washington to New York over ice sheets and through a howling blizzard? As nearly as I can calculate, this movie believes it can be done in 2 nights and most of 3 days. Oh, I forgot. They drive part of the way on highways that are gridlocked and buried in snow, except for where they're driving. How they get gas is not discussed in any detail. As for the answer to A, anyone familiar with the formula will know it is because he feels guilty about neglecting his son by spending all that time being a paleoclimatologist. It took him a lot of that time just to spell it. So, okay, the human subplots are nonsense, all except for the quiet scenes anchored by Ian Holm as a sad, wise Scottish meteorologist. Just like Peter O'Toole in Troy, Holm proves that a gifted British-trained actor can walk into almost any scene and make it seem like it means something. Quaid and Gyllenhaal and the small band of New York survivors do what can be done with impossible dialogue in an unlikely situation. And Dr. Lucy Hall, Sela Ward, Jack's wife and Sam's mother, struggles nobly in her subplot, which involves the little cancer patient named Peter. She stays by his side after the hospital is evacuated, calling for an ambulance, which we think is a tad optimistic since Manhattan has been flooded up to about the 8th floor. The water has frozen, and it's snowing. But does the ambulance arrive? Here's another one for you. Remember those wolves that escaped from the zoo? Think we'll see them again? Of the science in this movie, I have no opinion. I am sure global warming is real, and I regret that the Bush administration rejected the Kyoto Treaty, but I doubt that the cataclysm, if it comes, will come like this. It makes for a fun movie, though. Especially the parts where Americans become illegal immigrants in Mexico, and the vice president addresses the world via the Weather Channel. The Day After Tomorrow is ridiculous, yes, but sublimely ridiculous, and the special effects are stupendous. Well, the smug politicians didn't want to listen to the warnings of hunky scientist Jack Hall about global warming, did they? Oh dear me, no. And now look what's happened. A catastrophic temperature hike in the Antarctic has caused a grade 1 weather freakout, leading to New York getting swamped by an awe-inspiring tidal wave and then heaps of very much the wrong type of snow. In Scotland, another scientist, more fatherly than hunky and played by Ian Holm, is also monitoring the situation with a bunch of British guys, one of whom is keen on a sports team called Manchester United. A detail showing laborious research by writer-director Roland Emmerich, and presumably aimed at promoting his film in the Far East. In this Fox movie, the meteorological meltdown has at any rate shown some corporate loyalty by destroying all TV transmitter masts except those owned by Fox News and, in our own country, Sky News, which give jabbering updates about this deplorable situation. In Independence Day, Emmerich demonstrated his love of blowing famous buildings to smithereens. Now he's at it again, wiping out landmarks by the score. "Oh my God, there goes the Hollywood sign," hollers a TV reporter as the H and the O start to twirl up and away over the hurricane-stricken landscape. Virtually all of LA is flattened, a calamity which elicits from the cast a slack-jawed but faintly stoic disapproval. As ill fortune would have it, Gyllenhaal has other things to worry about apart from the utter destruction of the known universe. His moody 17-year-old son Sam, played by moody 23-year-old actor Jake Gyllenhaal, is away in New York, the very epicenter of danger, doing some kind of inter-school general knowledge quiz. Why is he doing this? Because he has an unspoken tendresse for a young woman on the team. Laura, Emmerich. It looks at first as if she is going to be stolen from him by a cute guy on another team, but it is this same putative rival who lays an understanding hand on Jake's shoulder and says, "Just tell her how you feel, man." How Jake feels? It's tricky to divine how Jake is feeling. With his dopey, idiot savant look, he always seems a couple of tunes short of the full iPod, but he sure as heck saves the day for Laura and all the other youngsters. There are some great special effects showing New York under the waves, with hints of Spielberg's AI, and of course Planet of the Apes. You have to get through an awful lot of terrible dialogue and acting, however, plus a lot of fantastically insincere waffle about the environment to get to those spectacular scenes. I felt the waters of silliness and boredom close over my head. The Day After Tomorrow is a 2004 science fiction disaster film directed by Roland Emmerich and starring Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal. It is a ridiculous but fun disaster flick. Have you ever seen The Air So Clear? When a sudden worldwide storm begins to plunge the entire planet into a new ice age, paleoclimatologist Gyllenhaal undertakes a dangerous trek to New York City to save his son from the disaster. This is a film that I vividly remember seeing and loving as a kid, but watching it now as an adult, I find it to be absolutely preposterous in every regard, though its entertaining factor is still quite strong. The world in this movie basically goes toward a full-blown ice age in a matter of days, which obviously made it absolutely ludicrous. While we cannot really expect from a Hollywood blockbuster to be scientifically accurate, we can at least wish to see some sort of believability and a story being rooted in reality, which simply wasn't the case here. The whole thing about the ocean erupting into a worldwide flood was particularly foolish. But those sequences where water flooded the city were extremely entertaining to watch. The film overall is fun throughout, but particularly so in its first half that was epic and glorious in VFX especially. These special effects were very much ahead of their time as the movie looks spectacular even today. It was shamelessly snubbed by the Academy in that category. But my main issue with The Day After Tomorrow isn't the plot's ludicrous nature, but the whole second half, as this is where the movie forgot about its epic elements and it went fully into dramatic territory, featuring characters for whom nobody cares, as they are slightly developed and quite bad. Seeing Quaid and Gyllenhaal in an Emmerich movie was crazy to me, in particular witnessing Jake here as he is so above this type of flick, but this was at the beginnings of his career, so it might have been a good choice for his career. Regardless, the human drama torpedoed this movie's upper hard, directed by Roland Emmerich, screenplay by Roland Emmerich, Jeffrey Nachmanoff, story by Roland Emmerich, produced by Mark Gordon. Roland Emmerich starring Dennis Quaid, Jake Gyllenhaal, Emmy Awesome Award cinematography Bully Steiger, edited by David Breener, music by Huss Production Companies, Centropolis Entertainment, The Mark Gordon Company, distributed by 20th Century Fox. Release dates May 17, 2004 in Mexico City, May 28, 2004 in United States. Running time 124 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $125 million. Box office $52.6 million. So guys, this is their view of The Day After Tomorrow movie, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.